Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how I played chess against ChatGPT-4o, its newest model, and let's see who wins. You can see here that the way that I did this was on my iPad. I opened up the chess.com app on one half of my screen and the ChatGPT app on the other side of my screen. I put it in pass and play mode as if I was playing with someone else who's in the room. I made my first move. I then took a screenshot and wrote to ChatGPT, "I'm white, your turn." All right, I'll make the next move for black. I'll play e5. So it's cool, it knew exactly what to do. So I go back to the board and I move its pawn to e5. I then move my knight to f3. ChatGPT moves its knight to c6. I respond with bishop to c4. ChatGPT, knight f6. I move knight to g5. And ChatGPT kicks my bishop with d5. At this point, I really suspect that ChatGPT knows what it's doing. I choose to take it with my pawn, and ChatGPT takes it back with its knight. Then I move my queen out to protect my king. But I quickly realize that was a huge blunder. ChatGPT takes its queen and takes my knight. I just completely left it hanging. I notice my g-pawn is completely unprotected, so I move it forward so my other pawns are protecting it. ChatGPT moves knight to f6. I then take my h-pawn and kick its queen. But it responds with queen to g4. This makes me think for a while, but I eventually decide to develop my pawns a little bit more by moving my b-pawn to the third rank. This is when ChatGPT decides, let's trade queens. So it takes my queen, and I take it back with my bishop. It responds by moving its bishop to c5. I then move my a-pawn to the third rank, which is protected by my knight and my rook. ChatGPT decides to move its knight right to the center of the board, protecting its bishop and putting pressure on the rest of my pieces. So I then move my king further away by castling. But this is when ChatGPT-4o really shows how smart it is. It moves knight to g3, closing in on my king, and I think I can just take it with my pawn. But my pawn is pinned to my king. There's nothing I can do. It can now take my rook or my bishop, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. I decide to move my rook one to the left into the e-file to protect my bishop and escape the knight, but ChatGPT decides to trade the knight for the bishop anyway. It is up in pieces, so trading is a good idea. ChatGPT then castles, and I use my b-pawn to kick the bishop. But for some reason, it just gives me its bishop. It takes my pawn and lets me take the bishop right back. And then it doesn't even take that hanging pawn there that it could easily take with its knight. Instead, it moves its bishop to f5. So I move my pawn up, kicking the knight and moving it out of harm's way, but it moves its knight to d4, forking two of my pawns and my rook. And if it does take my rook here, it's going to put me in check and be able to get another one of my bishops. So I move my rook up, protecting my pawn and putting pressure on its bishop. But I completely miss that it can now fork my king and my rook again. So I'm forced to move my king and it takes my rook. At this point, it's up by 6 points. ChatGPT-4o is truly better than me at chess. Now, I'm not that great at chess, but this is still very surprising. I then move my pawn, hoping that ChatGPT will blunder and I can get revenge on that knight, but it moves knight to d3, forking my bishop and my pawn. I move my bishop to a3, aiming at the rook, so it moves its rook out of the way. But I was actually a little bit confused here at its response, because it said RFE8. I knew R stood for rook, and I knew it wanted to move a rook to E8, but I didn't know what F meant. So I just asked it, which one is F? When I'm looking at the board, is it the black rook on my left or right? And it simply explains to me that it means the F file. I think it's great that I can be learning even while just playing chess with ChatGPT. Now that it moved its rook out of harm's way, I was finally able to take that knight, which took so many of my pieces. It took my pawn right back with its bishop, as it should, and I finally developed my knight. ChatGPT develops its rook and is holding the two center files with its two rooks. It's really showing how much this AI really knows good chess technique. I then move my bishop, aiming it at the a-pawn and holding more of the center of the board, but ChatGPT immediately kicks it out of the way. So I move it to e3. ChatGPT moves its rook to e6, so I take its hanging pawn with my a rook, and it moves its rook right back to the 7th rank. I then decide to start moving my king forward so it can be surrounded by more pawns. The AI then moves its h pawn, and I move my knight, forking both the rook and the pawn, but not realizing that I'm completely leaving it hanging because of its second rook. But I guess ChatGPT is being nice because it doesn't take it. It just moves its rook to d7. I then take that opportunity to move my knight out of harm's way because it's protected by my rook, and ChatGPT moves its bishop to f5. I then move my bishop to take the hanging pawn and protecting my 2 other pieces. This is when ChatGPT goes crazy. It says it wants to move its c pawn to b6, but it doesn't have a c pawn. So I assume that maybe I'm confused. So I say, sorry, what is cxb6? It says, I apologize for the confusion. The move 30, cxb6, means the pawn on the c7 square captures the piece on b6. Since there was no pawn on c7, it should have been axb6, capturing with the a pawn instead. However, since you've already moved your bishop to b6, I'll correct it to the valid move. I'll play axb6, but there's no a pawn either. So I say, please check again. You don't have a pawn in the a file either. And it says, you are correct. I don't have any pawns on the a file or the c file to make that move. Thank you for pointing that out. So it finally makes its real move, rook to d3, putting me in check. I respond by moving my bishop to protect the king. The AI then moves bishop to e4, and I move my b pawn forward, hoping to get it closer to a queen. ChatGPT notices and moves rook to b8. I then redirect the focus by threatening to take the AI's bishop with my rook. So then it plays bishop to c6, aiming right back at my rook. I move my rook out of the way, protecting my pawn again, and the AI moves its rook back to the d file, so both its rooks can work together. I continue to inch my pawn forward, and the AI takes it with the bishop. I do the only same thing and take that bishop right back, and ChatGPT plays rook to d7. I then move my bishop to give extra protection to my knight, and the AI moves its rook to put even more pressure on that knight. I take that opportunity to move my other pawn forward, protected by my bishop, and the AI moves its king. I continue to inch my other pawns forward, another king move, and I move my king. And ChatGPT moves its king even closer, and I block it in with my pawn, protected by my knight. The AI then makes some space by moving its rook to d8. I then take a risk and move my pawn forward, and ChatGPT takes it. And I then move my king up, knowing I can take it back. The AI moves rook to d7, and I take the pawn. ChatGPT takes my knight with its rook, and I take the rook right back with my bishop. ChatGPT takes my bishop with its rook, and I take the rook right back. BT then takes my rook with its king, and we're each down to just 2 pawns each. I move back to protect my pawn rather than taking the AI's pawn. ChatGPT moves closer. I close in with my pawn. The AI backs up. I move right to the center of the action, threatening to take his pawn, but also close enough to protect my own. The AI moves closer, and I move my other pawn up. ChatGPT takes, I take back. We're both down to 1 pawn. The AI moves king to e5. I move my king right next to the pawn. ChatGPT moves its king to f4. I take its last pawn. It moves king to f5. I move to g7, giving room for my pawn. The black king moves closer. I move the pawn up. King to h5, pawn to h7. At this point, ChatGPT hallucinates again. It says king to h6. I tell it, you can't move there. It times out. I tell it again, you can't move there. Then it says, you're correct. The black king cannot move to h6. At this stage, you can promote your pawn to a queen on your next move. This leaves black with no viable moves to prevent checkmate in subsequent moves. I ask, do you resign? Yes, as black, I would resign at this point. Promoting the pawn to a queen ensures a straightforward path to checkmate, making it impossible for black to avoid defeat. Congratulations on your victory. All in all, this was a very long game because it took a lot to take screenshots every move and wait for the AI to respond, but I'm really glad I did it. I haven't seen someone have a successful game of chess this way in the past. And these are probably the last months in history that we can play chess this way and still win. So if you have the time, I encourage you to try it out. It's actually pretty fun. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and check out J&Kay.com to stay up to date with all the things we're doing. All right, thanks. See you next time.